Welcome back to the Justin Prince Show. Today is a special episode. You're going to meet one of my dear friends and one of the best marketers on the planet. In addition to that, though, Wes has done this incredible job of building a life that he loves and inspiring and liberating other people to do the same thing. But he does it, as a great father, as a great husband. So he's got this really incredible kind of collective of how he's doing multiple things at a high level. This will be a really interesting and profound conversation. There's a lot of these insights of like, man, if he can do it, I can do it. Coming from, an underprivileged, as it were, background and so on, to be able to be really at the very top of his game, in the online marketing space. So buckle up, and I'm excited to introduce you guys to Wes Bewley. Wes Bewley, man, I'm fired up to have you on, and fired up to have people that don't know you get to know you. So appreciate you doing this.
Yeah, man, good to see you. Absolutely.
So, one of the first things I wanted to just chat with you about is, to me, you are a very intentional and a really fantastic father. You are a really awesome dad. And I don't know, I'm like curious, like, where did that come from for you? Like that level of intention, that level of desire to really pour into, in your case, these two sons. Like, is that just like, I don't know, I just do what I do? Or is that like, no, I wanted to do that with high intention?
We didn't, that's an interesting question because now obviously, I make mistakes as a dad, right? You see on Instagram all the great things I do as a dad, right? But I do make a lot of mistakes as a dad, and I try my best to not beat myself up too much. But I think it originally happened. I was playing Little League baseball, and Justin, you've seen my frame. Like, you don't look at me and go, that guy hits home runs. You know what I mean? And so I wasn't a big home run hitter. I'd hit a bunch of little singles and, doubles here and there. But my dad he still holds the record for most RBIs in a baseball game at Texas Tech University. He hit 2 grand slams and a single home run. So he still holds the RBI record. So it's like weird to have a dad who is like home run champion, and then you can barely hit a home run, right? And so I'm in Little League, and by the grace of God, one day, this slow curve comes in, and I turn my hips just right and hit it over the fence. And well, as a son, as a boy, the first thing I do is look in the stands to see, did my dad see it? And unfortunately, my dad was at work, and I appreciate the fact that he worked, but at that age, I vowed almost like, I'm going to be the dad. One day I'm going to be the dad that can be in the stands, or better yet, coach the team. And then, but prior to even that, my parents got divorced when I was little. And there's actually a year of my life, Justin, like from 4 to 5, I have no memory. That's when my parents split up, and my grandparents would tell me all these stories of like, she would sing this song to me, because I'd be just bawling all the time. And so my dad told me at a young age that he left to go to work in Austin. As I got older, I realized he went to be with another woman. And so when I kind of got older and realized that, I was just like, wait, what? Like, was it that good? Like, was it really worth that to trade me and my brother and my mom for that? Like, and now obviously things are never that clear, right?
Yeah,
and
of course. Never
never that black and white. And my dad ended up becoming one of my best friends later on in my life. But at a young age, I also vowed that one day I'll be the dad that I always wanted, And anyways, I don't say that as a knock against my dad. My dad was incredible, and he was probably one of the most patient men I've ever seen. Like, I can't remember him raising his voice at me, but it made me like, I just think fatherhood is such a gift, like, to me, it's like, I even have this little Instagram reel where it's like what's the coolest name you've ever been called, and it's like, you might think entrepreneur, you might think successful, but the coolest name I've ever been called is dad, So I don't know, man. I if it was up to me, I would have had, 10 to 20 kids, but I'm not the one having them. So I've got 2 phenomenal boys,
It's so interesting. I had really some similar kind of experiences that I made like similar, like, all right, I'm gonna do it a little bit different. What was like, where did you grow up, and what was that, what was growing up like for you? Like, what were you, an athlete? Were you more of a book nerd? Were you more of a were you into hunting? Like, what were you doing as a kid growing up? Like, just walk us through. I've never had a chance to really go through some of your childhood stuff.
Yeah, yeah. So I grew up out in Lubbock, Texas, which is West Texas. Have you ever been to Lubbock?
Not yet. No.
You don't ever want to go. It's flat, and then whenever there's a north wind, it blows in the cow yard, so the whole town smells like manure. It's weird, man. Like
Wow.
I, even when I go back to Lubbock to visit my mom, I'm just like, all right. After about 2 days, I'm like, all right, we're ready to bounce. But I grew up. I was, at the age of basically 4, my parents got divorced, and then I was raised by my mom, and my mom was a full-time nurse. So I've always had a special place in my heart for single moms too, just because I saw her struggle. I remember all the times that we'd get home, or in the evening we'd hear her crying, and she'd be on the phone with my grandparents, her parents, because she'd overdrawn her bank account again. And I remember one time we wanted to go out to eat, and she's like, we can't go out to eat till Friday. That's when I get paid. And she's like, and we're like driving down, this main road in Lubbock, and the sun's setting, and we're in this minivan. It's like a red and tan minivan. And I've always tried to be like a good boy, like I've always been very grateful for everything I have. So I never felt what she was about to say next, what she was about to say next when we couldn't go out to eat was, and she's like, boys, I don't want you to think we're poor. We're not poor. We're so blessed compared to so many other people. And I remember thinking, like, why in the world is my mom saying this?
Yeah.
But my mom would get up at 4:30 in the morning, and she'd get back at 5:30 p.m. at night usually. So I would, at a young age, I had to like hear the alarm, get me and my brother dressed. We'd walk, just like the old stories you hear, like walk 10 miles to school in the snow. But we really did. Now maybe it wasn't 10 miles, maybe it was like more like 2. But we'd get chased by dogs, on the way to school. We'd have to jump up on top of cars to where we wouldn't get rabies. But it caused, when my dad left, I had to now be the man of the house as best I could at the age of 5, 6, 7, 8, and beyond. So I liked my childhood. I had like this neighborhood. We'd play sandlot baseball, and it was so crazy. I don't know how it worked. I know you probably were the same because we're around the same age, but like we didn't have cell phones, but yet somehow we knew to meet at the baseball park at a certain time, and then we'd have fishing contests and like all these neighborhood boys, man. We just had the greatest summers. And but I found a lot of my identity in sports. I was a B+ student. School was pretty trivial to me. I knew I was never going to use trigonometry. I knew I knew I could. I had a distinct instinct in school that a lot of this stuff that I was being taught was meaningless for my life purpose. And so school, I liked it just from the social aspect. I've always enjoyed people. I've always loved meeting new people. I love awkward conversation, probably the most of anything in the world. So I really loved school, but I found my identity and confidence in sports. So that's kind of how it was.
What were your sports? What were you playing?
Mainly basketball, a little bit of baseball, but a little bit of football. But I never liked team sports, especially in school, because politics came into it. Like my mom was working, so she wasn't on the PTA board, So I hated that. So what I liked the most was individual sports like track and field. And that's why I ended up going to Texas Tech to be a walk-on on the track and field team. But I liked track and field. Number one, I love a good track meet, like all the colors of the different schools. And, it's a beautiful event. But I like that if I lost, I lost. And if I won, I won. So it's like victory or defeat was up to me. Politics or tenure or any of those things didn't matter. So I enjoyed track and field the most. Specifically, I liked the mile relay, and I liked being the anchor leg on the mile relay, seeing if I could suck somebody up that was ahead of us. So that was always my, I was a hurdler too because I was fast, but I wasn't quick. So, like the 100-yard dash, I would get smoked, right? But the 100-meter hurdles, okay. you know, so, that was kind of where I excelled is track and field. And then
Interesting.
it was weird because my junior year of high school, I'd always go and work for my dad in the summer. So my dad was a painter. His dad was a painter. His dad's dad was a painter. And I'm not talking like the Bob Ross kind. I mean, talking like the guy that's in your house, puttying and sanding before the AC's installed. So that's what every summer I'd go work for my dad, and then he'd give us a little bit of money at the summer. And those summers were just a blast. We'd go work, we'd fish,
So how far away was he from you?
He was 6 hours away.
Oh, wow. Okay. So when
Yeah.
you went there, you're kind of there,
So when I went there, I was there for, 2 months or so,
Got
two and
it,
a half
yeah.
months. However, though, my dad also got me into hunting and fishing. And so my granddad still lived in Lubbock, who is my dad's dad. We called him Peepaw. he was hell on wheels, man. He came from like that old generation. He was just a very tough, rough guy, And that's probably why my dad was so sweet, because he had such a tough, this overbearing dad growing up. But my dad and basically every weekend in junior high and even towards the end of elementary school, we would all meet in San Angelo, Texas, which was 3 hours away from Lubbock and 3 hours away from Austin. We'd go hunting all weekend. So that was good because it kept me out of trouble. I was never at the parties. I was never there because I was always hunting when all that stuff was going on. And that's where we would just meet up and hang out all weekend, go hunting, just tell jokes, camp. And so then when it wasn't hunting season, then I'd go work for my dad in the summers. And so, that's kind of what got me into entrepreneurship, though, was I realized very quickly I did not want to be the fourth generation painter, Have you ever done any of that kind of stuff like
Yeah,
construction
no.
work?
So my dad built homes and did land development, and so it's funny. I made some of those same decisions. There was one summer I was 18 years old. High school's done, and I went up to a place called West Bountiful, which is about a 40-minute or so drive, 45-minute drive. And this is summertime Salt Lake City. So we have 4 distinct seasons, but in the summer it's hot. It's 100 and something degrees. It's hot, and I'd go up there, and he had this subdivision that was just weeds, and they'd like dug out what was going to be a little stream that was going to run through the subdivision when it was done, and so they needed to retain it with rocks, and so they'd have these big dump trucks come and they'd drop these big rocks. The rocks, by the way, were like too big for 2 hands. You felt like you're like, oh my gosh, they're not that big, but then they're too small or too big for 1 hand, too small for 2, right?
Right.
And so you'd kind of have to grab them, and you're like hold them like this. And I remember I jumped down in this little pit, into the little river thing, and I'm covered in sweat. It's 100, 105 degrees, and I hit the 2 rocks like this, and it hits like some loose dirt, and it just poof, like goes up over my head. I'm like sitting there like this. I'm like, oh my gosh. So I'm like caked in dirt, and I remember thinking, my life sucks. I am lining a ditch with rocks,
Yeah.
And I remember making this decision. I'm going to learn how to make a living with my mind and my mouth versus my back and my hands, because up until that point, all the dollars I'd ever earned were all my back and hands. It's just all manual work.
Right.
And so it's funny, those little those anchor decision points of you know what, I'm going to do it a little bit different than I'm doing it right now. And some of those early, I tease my dad. He used to drop me off at 8 years old on the construction sites, and I was what they called the gopher. So I wasn't learning a skill. I didn't have a hammer and was learning a skill. The gopher was go for this, go for that, go for this. So you're just cleaning up the construction site.
Right.
And he'd drop me off at 8 in the morning and pick me up at 5:30 at night. And I'm like, number one, I think we broke every child labor law on the planet, number one. And then number two, how did I not get just kidnapped or molested by all the kind of, ex-con construction workers? And then I remember thinking man, I really learned my work ethic during that. Like I would grind out in the summer, just this little kid out there, just throwing all the lumber away and sweeping out the houses and just all that. So, learning how to actually put in an honest day's work was really valuable stuff.
Oh yeah, well, that's what I'm saying. Like, you know how like even in the e-commerce business we're in, like sometimes you'll meet people that are like, man, this is hard. And I'm like, what are you talking about? Like construction in 103-degree Texas heat with no AC, that was hard.
Yeah.
Talking to people and them saying they're not interested, like who cares, But it's like without that contrast, you might think it's hard, So it's like I'm so grateful for that. Like even I mean, I just had a lot of really cool seeds planted growing up. Like one summer this was like a cash flow king, but in Lubbock, Texas, they have these curbs, and then they have your address number on the curb. But after a while, the sun fades it,
Yeah.
So my mom took me to Hobby Lobby one time, and she bought me this spray paint and these little stencils, like numbers, And then I also got a Texas Tech logo, so that was like my first upsell. Is
That's so cool.
I would respray paint your curb, but then for an extra $5, I'd put you a Texas Tech logo. And I from a young age, I really, excellence was really important to me. My name was really important to me, and so I think I did a pretty good job with these curbs, and I was like, I'd make $70 in an afternoon, which for a 12, 13-year-old, it's like, oh, I'm rich, And I remember my dad's mom, we call it, so it's me mom, Peepaw, so redneck. But my meemaw said, I heard you've been doing some curbs. And I was like, yes, ma'am. And she's like, I heard you do a really good job. And I was like, yes, ma'am. And she's like, that's because you're a Bewley. And I was like,
That's because you're a Bewley?
it's because you're a Bewley. And I was
Love
like,
that.
yes, ma'am. So it's like from a young age, it was like those little small seeds, as I look back, made all the difference,
Yeah, that identity is so powerful. It starts to anchor in that identity of who you really are. How did entrepreneurship start with you? It came from, you're kind of running your own little shop right there, but like,
Yeah.
I think it first started when you were in college, kind of the first kind of idea of running your own show. How did that start for you?
Yeah. It maybe even ties back to that oath I made at a young age of like, one day I'm going to be the dad that can coach the practice. So I'd work for my dad every summer. And then one summer I got in a foot race with some of the high school athletes in a town called Marble Falls, Texas. It's about 45 minutes from Austin. I got in a foot race and, smoked them, right? No. But their head coach came out and said, hey, we're going to be district champs this year. Do you want to be our starting wide receiver? And it was interesting because in Lubbock, all the high schools were really big, 5A, now they're 6A. They were huge. So, I mean, there's so much talent in those monster schools that just sits on the sideline, right? But back then, this town that I would visit every summer was like a 4A, and it was a small 4A. So it's like, if they wanted you, you're going to play, And it was really interesting because I would, so I got in a foot race with them, and then they said, we're going to be, district champs this year, and do you want to be our starting wide receiver? And I'd never even really, I didn't play football a whole lot. My mom didn't really want me playing football, and but to be wanted was really an amazing feeling, to
Wow.
be seen and to be recognized and wanted and desired was really powerful. And so I was like, yeah, I'll transfer schools. So my junior year, I transferred schools, which was awesome because there's this movie, I don't know if you've ever seen it, Justin, called Varsity Blues. Mm-hmm. It's an old movie, but it's about this little Texas football town, and they just kind of, if you play football, you kind of run things. That's how this school was. Yeah. Like, I had a history teacher named Miss Eastwood, and if you didn't know the answer to the question on a history test, you'd call her over, Miss Eastwood, and you'd point to A, and she'd go, you'd point to B, and she'd just walk away, and so then you knew it was B. That's what she would do for the football players, Like, we could almost do whatever we wanted to, which was awesome in high school, not so awesome in college, because in college, they didn't think I was so cute. But in high school, it was a great high school experience. And anyways, that right after I graduated high school, I was working for my dad right before I started school at Texas Tech, and then I was coaching a summer track program, and I'd have about 80 parents pull up, drop their kids off, go to work. Pull up, drop their kids off, go to work. Very normal. Seen it all my life, very expected. But there was this one dad that would get out, and back then he had this black Z71 step-side truck. And you remember that truck, dude. Back then it was like the truck, And so he would pull up, and he was probably 32, 33 years old, and he'd kind of stretch and look around. He was never in a hurry to be anywhere. And I'm like, what does that guy do? And it was funny because the other coaches in the program, I'm like, yo, who's that guy? And they go, oh, his name's Danny. He made $1 million selling vitamins. And they said it kind of like mockingly, like, yeah, millionaire. And I'm thinking, I want to sell vitamins.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
What are you talking about? So it's like, it reminded me of like, all of us were sitting there seeing the same thing every day. I was curious.
Yep.
They weren't curious. Curiosity can make you rich, And so I struck up a conversation with him. He ended up offering me a job at his ranch, making $7 an hour back in the year 2000, plus all of these supplements that I could take. And the very first day so first I go out to this house, and it was like, it was a little ranchette outside of Marble Falls. It was like the stuff dreams are made of, especially when you're 18. It's like this $150,000 pool with a 53-foot slide and this ranch house and land. And I learned so many valuable lessons even working for him, because he was building his business. So every day he would share one or two things with me. I remember one day we were looking at his land, and I was like, man, it must feel, like, how far does your land go? And he goes, well, my land goes to there, but that guy up on the hill, he owns all that. And I'm like, man, that's nice. And he's like, yeah, he inherited it. I'm like, wow, must be nice. And I never will forget, he put his shovel down. We were in the middle of the Texas heat, He puts his shovel down, he looks at me and he goes, yeah, but there's nothing like going out there and getting your own. And I'm like, yeah, like exactly. But, one of the first things he did that day, so obviously I'm looking around, I've always been very like observant. Like if you're living the life I want, I'm going to ask you what you do, And so the very first day on the job, he gave me and my buddy who was visiting this book called Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And he said, boys, I'll give you $50 to read this book. Well, what was so fascinating was that my friend at the time, he gave my friend the same book. My friend never read that book.
Yep.
I don't know what he's doing today. To me though, again, grateful childhood, grateful disposition for anything. A millionaire gave me a book.
So good.
Oh my. So what I do, I went home and devoured that book. Read every word. And obviously, in that book, it says, if you want to be wealthy, you should get into direct sales or real estate. Well, back then I didn't have any money, so it's like real estate's not an option. I've got $43 in my bank account. So then I was like, what's direct sales? So then I came back the next day and said, hey, forget the $50. I want you to show me how to get rich. And he kind of took me under his wing at the age of 18 and taught me the business, and that's kind of how I got into it. But to me, it was the greatest thing, because all the things I'd ever done before, I would do a job, get paid, do a job, get paid. And I never will forget my first month in, direct selling, affiliate marketing, whatever you want to call it. I made $1,200, which again was like, that's like making $100,000 when you're 18 in the year 2000,
Sure.
Made $1,200. And then the next month I made $2,100, but $900 of that was repeat business. And I was like, oh, wait, like for once in my life, I can see the light at the end of the tunnel. It's not a freight train about to run me over. So it's like at a young age, I was like, if it's not residual, I'm not interested.
Yeah. Yeah.
If it's not a leveraged income model, what are we even talking about?
Yep.
You know what I mean? Because once you've tasted that, it's like these people are like, sometimes our culture's like, you guys do direct sales? Oh my gosh. And it's like, dude, what are you doing? Like, what are you talking about? Yeah, leveraged income. Yeah, we empower people. Yeah, we have, residual products that people love and continue to reorder. Like, what is there to discuss?
Yeah.
And and it's always made me like, I've got this coffee mug that says, I can explain it to you. I can't understand it for you. You know, like I've just always been like, hey, I get it. And if you don't get it, that's okay with me, but I don't want to take that class, you know? So that's kind of how I
Check
got
this out,
into
dude.
it.
I've told you about Nathan Ricks. Nathan Ricks was this
Yeah.
this mentor that I modeled from afar, and he was introduced. He was a real estate broker. Was introduced to direct sales, and left being a real estate broker. This is like in 1989, kind of time frame, and ultimately went on to make like $70 million in commissions, $80 million in commissions. But he became a first generation billionaire. He like took that money and like invested it into real estate, etc. He was just he was a special guy. So later in my life, I went from like listening to his DVDs or like finding a way to sneak onto one of his Monday calls with his leaders, or sneaking. I remember sneaking into some of his flying events that they would do in Provo, Utah. I was kind of like, I wasn't even part of his team or his company. He didn't know who I was at all. I remember the first time I met him, I'm like, I hate to like sound like I'm going to creep you out here at all, but I've been like you've been like mentoring me from afar, So I remember once we ended up doing business together. We did investing together, and one of the things we were investing in was these mobile home parks. It was like a big fund that he had built, these big mobile home park funds.
Wait, hold on real quick. You and Nathan invested together?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah. No,
Oh, that's so
it
cool.
was almost so surreal because when I met him, it was surreal because you'd kind of I like hung in there because of his his example, and then we became actual friends. Like I'd text him and go to dinner, that kind of thing, and then we became actual partners. He had invested millions of dollars with him. It was just so surreal. Like, how is this all happening? And I remember saying to him once, as I was trying to understand how the fund worked, kind of how the economics worked, because they have basically like you put your money in, had a preferred return, and then what they would do is refinance the fund, the property after X amount of years, and then they'd give you your capital back. And I said to him, I go, so is it done at that point? Which, by the way, at that point, it'd be like one of the best investments you ever made. You got your cash back, plus you made this preferred return. It was all good. And he goes, we're on the phone. He goes, Justin. He goes, of course not. He goes, then you own this lifetime residual of this thing. He goes, if this didn't have residual income, it'd be against my religion. That kind of thing.
Yeah.
And man, once it hits you that like you can do work once and be paid on it in repeat. When you're not doing that, you're like, what in the world am I doing just trading or exchanging this time for money or this service for money? And then once I stop, boom, it's like, when he was a real estate broker, listen, he could crush it as a real estate broker. And I'm not putting down real estate brokers in any way, but it's just, it hits you of like, if I don't go sell more houses, I don't make more dollars,
Yes.
And so I think that getting bit by that bug of residual income, I love your idea of like, I can't make you understand it, but man, once it hits you, you will fight and claw and run through a brick wall to make sure you go secure residual income.
Yeah, I mean it's yeah, I'm like so grateful that that it's not like a mental block for me, And I even think back to like, my first business I was ever in, it got to just kind of a weird point for probably the last 5 years. There was just a lot going on behind the scenes that I wasn't aware of, but I could feel it, And so, I started, doing online coaching and online courses, and that's where I got a lot of this little ClickFunnels stuff. I did that for a little while.
Well, explain what that is for someone that doesn't know what that means.
So ClickFunnels is a software company, and they, if you do 7 figures in sales, then you get that little. I'm sorry, if you do, 7 figures in sales, you get that gold one. So I had 2 of those. I actually had 3. It just broke the other one. And then that silver one is when you do 10 million or more in sales through one of their funnels. So I was very good at it, but I remember even like, I did high ticket coaching, almost as high as you could do it. I mean, people have done it bigger, but I was making 6 figures a month profit doing it, But the problem is, in order to repeat that, I had to do all that work all over again. It was a lot of phone calls, sales calls, And to keep making, let's just say 100,000 a month doing that, I had to be doing, 3, 4, 5 calls a day, and they're very intense, connected calls,
Yes. Yes.
It's like, I can't do this forever. And so, that was a point in my life where it's like, the company I was in at the time was kind of weird. And then if you're on social media, it's like a lot of times great things are not celebrated. Usually what's like acceptable, that's not going to take you too far ahead of anyone else, that's what gets celebrated on social media. That's why if I went online today and I said, guys, I just accepted a new job as a barista at Starbucks, everybody'd be like, congratulations, oh my gosh. Because realistically, that doesn't hold a mirror up to their life, Not that there's anything wrong with the Starbucks barista. I like Starbucks barista. I'll take a vanilla cold press, if you don't mind, a medium. But it's like people celebrate you very easily if it's not going to hold up a mirror of what they're doing with their life. But indirect sales, you're doing the thing that everyone is afraid to do, talking to people, being passionate about something.
Yeah, put yourself out there.
Like if you put yourself out there, like if you think about most professions, very few people at let's just say Facebook, which again, love Facebook, but I don't see any Meta employees on Facebook going, oh my gosh, I love my job at Meta. Like, I am so passionate to help change the world with social media today. No, they just quietly live their lives. They go to work. They're not passionate. They're just getting their paycheck. So to be in a career path where I am publicly passionate about that which I do, that, a lot of times I don't think a lot of people necessarily are quick to celebrate that because they're like, dang it, what am I passionate about? Anyways, that being said, during this time, it was like, even I would hear people at ClickFunnels be like, this is really good unless you're an MLM, and it was like MLM was kind of like this little, it's kind of like the redheaded stepchild, and yeah, it was an industry that had gotten me all my freedom, and I remember thinking, well, it's like they almost influenced me a little bit of like, this is cool, MLM's not. And so then I went and played their game at the highest level you could play it. And I'm like, this blows in comparison. You know what I mean? And so then I kind of remembered like, no, wait a second. If these guys could live a day in my life, they would instantly trade.
Yeah.
They've just never done that, So anyways, it was a great journey. But, point of it is, as soon as I realized that, I quickly returned to residual income,
You to me have done an incredible job, and by the way, it's one of the things I actually admire about you. You've figured out this framework of what I call ILI. So it's like income, lifestyle, impact. It's like, how do I make a great income? An income that's just fantastic. In your case, it's just off the charts. Number one. But then also, how do I have a lifestyle that I just love? Because if you were making all the money in the world and you hated your life, then it's almost like you lost, right? In your case, you can take the kids out to the tree stand, to the tree stand or the blind, and wait for the deer. You can take them out to the ranch, or you can go take your wife on a fun date, so you have a life that you love. You're able to really pour into people the way you want. And then the last one is impact. So it's like, if you make all the money in the world and you love your life, you have a great life, but you're selling cocaine, this isn't going to work well, right? Because your impact sucks. And it's like, there's a part of us that, people, for sure, people like you and I, that like, we want to like serve people and like add value and like give back. And in fact, if we made all the money in the world, had a great life, and weren't like adding value to anybody, like we were selling widgets to Walmart, we'd have a hole in our heart, it'd be like, oh, I like want to do something to help people. So you have a business where you can make incredible income. There's a ceiling of what you want to go perform based on what you want to go do. Two is you can create an incredible life that you love and don't need to take vacations from. And then three is then you're making this positive impact and serving people and adding value. To me, you've created that trifecta in really a special way. Like, I feel like you work your butt off for sure, but I also feel like you're the one picking the kids up, at 2:00 from school, and you have a balance and a really great life. I feel like it's a lifestyle by design. I mean, is that kind of how you look at it? That you're trying to create a life that you really love.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, by the way, like, you do a world-class job at this as well. Like, my goodness, but In fact, you're even higher. I think you do an even better job of the community impact. That's what I'm trying to get. That's what I'm trying to do more this year. You just do a phenomenal job of that, like speaking into the high school students and all that, and just all the stuff I see you do. But yeah, the 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 founder of the first company I was ever in was a guy named Charlie Regis, and he was a inductee into something called the Roaring Lambs. Have you ever heard of that?
Mm-mm.
It's a very hard thing to get into. It's like some type of Christian organization, but it's Christian businessmen, and they call like everyone you've ever done business with, and it's a pretty big deal. And then he was also an Ernst and Young runner-up one year, and anyways, he was a stud, but he lived by a code, and he was probably 6'4", and he was just resolute, a lot like you, it's just different, Texas, Utah, just different guys, but he was just a little bit more, he was an older man. He was probably 60. He was in his 60s. But he was the one I first heard about that I could design a life on my terms, And then that caused me to listen to a lot of Jim Rohn stuff,
Yep.
Rohn, and I never will forget this quote that Jim said, your life is God's gift to you. Your gift back to God is to live a good life.
Yeah.
And so then that became even more prevalent when I had kids, because my 12-year-old now, he was a little boy then, but he'd come in and go, Dad, he's just so cute, man. He's probably like 4 or 5 at that time. He had these ears on him and these big blue eyes, and he'd go, Dad, what should I do today? I'm like, well, what do you want to do? And he's like, well, I'm trying to decide between Legos and Roblox, And I was like, son, I think you should do what you want to do. And, the ancient text talks about how the connection between you as an earthly father and him as a heavenly father. And, it's like, if I feel that way, how much more does God feel that way? Like, and I point that out just because my first spiritual mentor, he was really, he for most of the time I knew him, he's actually in a great place now, but for the most of the time I knew him, he felt like this unseen burden to just work all the time and do all this ministry and just like sacrifice, and he didn't seem happy. You know what I mean? And I'm like, I don't know, dude. Like, I don't know if that's the path. I mean, if someone's called to do something like that, okay, I'm not here to say they're not. But I think I probably have, I don't know, seeing him and how he did things, and it seemed ineffective to me. Like, I wouldn't want to I wouldn't want to believe in whatever he believed in based upon the life that he lived at that time. Again, this is an incredible guy I'm referencing, but I'm just talking about this one little aspect, And so it made it important to like, okay, my life is God's gift to me. My gift back to God is to live a good life. And then also too, what I want to do, like, I'm always trying to inspire other people that they can design their life too. So if you look at me at face value, you might go, man, this guy's flashy. Man, this guy, wow. Oh, another car video. Wow. Okay. But I don't care about that. My motive in doing that is to inspire you that you can do it too, because I'm a kid that came from, 94th Street in Lubbock, Texas, and started my first business when I was 18 and had $43 in my bank account.
Yep.
If I could do it, man, what more could you do, So I'm always trying to like lead by example of like, if I say, oh, you can achieve all your dreams, but then I'm not achieving mine, what is that? So it's just one of those things,
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, because it's so interesting with you. It's like, so I was talking with Ty. You and I both know Ty. Ty's my videographer, and
oh yeah,
he's just a great kid. So Ty was talking to a person the other day, and they said, yeah, like I saw that Wes Bewley guy. I don't know what I think about him. Like I they basically said, like your Instagram or something, you know. And Ty and I kind of both laughed, you know, because we know you, right?
Yeah.
And Ty was telling this person, he's like, no. You that's like you kind of have it wrong. That's not who Wes is. You just got to kind of know who Wes is, you know. And they're like, yeah, but he, you know, a little flashy, and like, you know, I'm not sure. And the thing that they don't understand, there's a couple things. One is like, you know, you really get to know someone when chips are down, like when like, you know, when it's like the pressure's on. Like you're a person of like high code, of like high moral code, and like you're like your word matters, you know, your name matters. You're like, hey, if I tell you I'm your friend, that kind of stuff actually means something to you.
Yeah.
And then you know, you've shared this with me before. You're kind of like, I'm kind of a peacock. Like, I don't know. Like, so in other words, think about it this way. If a peacock, if you guys can imagine in your mind, the peacock, then they open up those incredible, beautiful feathers. That's what they should do. They're a peacock, dude. Like, they should like open those feathers and like let us enjoy the, you know, the creativity and the beauty and the majesty of this incredible, like unique, you know, animal.
Yeah.
And I've always kind of admired that about you. You're like, I'm a peacock, dude. I don't like, in other words, I don't know what to tell you. Like that's just, it's just, I like to open the feathers, dude. So just walk us through that. Like walk us through, again, if someone met you online, I don't feel like they actually, I think it takes them a second to get to know the real you. Cause anyone that's actually worked with you, they would like take a freaking bullet. They'd lay it down for you in 2 seconds. Because you love at such a deep level. You have such a curiosity and a love for people. So I don't know. How do you process that as I walk through that?
Oh man, it's a, you know, there's a lot of different ways you could go with that. I mean, again, it's all of us are a product of all the inputs we've had in our life. You know what I mean? So to explain it to you, I'd have to take you to all these little individual moments as to why I am how I am. But well, a couple of things, just premise wise. One is there was this guy. I don't know if you've ever heard this guy's name's Bob Harrison. Dr. Increase is what they reference him as.
I don't think so. No.
He's got some of the best material I've ever heard. His name's Bob Harrison, and his website's real janky. Like somebody needs to redo it. It's hard to get his stuff now, but back in the day, he used to send these CD packs, and you know your car used to have a CD player, so. It seemed like a lot easier back then to turn your car into like a mobile university or something. Yeah. But now you have to be a little bit more intentional about it. But these CD sets were expensive back then. They were like $450, $500, $600, and he would you know, they call him Dr. Increase, right? So it's increased thinking. So he tells a story one time where he was a former Amway distributor, and he would also, I think, speak at their conventions or something. But he's hanging out with one of the top number 1 or number 2 income earners in Amway, and they're in Hawaii. And the top income earner has this bank bag zipped. And his wife walks up and she's like, honey, I'm going to go shopping. I need some money. And he goes, how much do you need? And she's like, about an inch. So he opens up the bank bag, takes out an inch, right?
Yeah.
And that's so crazy, right? But it's like, then Bob goes on to talk about even just the life of Jesus, you know, like Jesus was a treasurer, or Jesus had a treasurer. Even understanding that alone is wild, that Jesus had a treasurer, because like I got pretty good money. I still don't have a treasurer. You know what I mean? Like, and I'll tell you this, Justin, you don't need a treasurer unless you got, you know, some significant funds going, you know? So even like realizing that, like, cause we always see this picture of like, if you're wealthy, then you're far from Christ or whatnot. And it's like, Jesus had a treasurer, dude. Like, I don't know what to tell you. Or if, you know, if I look at the sky, you know, like, you know, I like bling stuff, you know, I like shiny stuff. Like I try to avoid it. Cause you know, it'd be probably nicer if I just had very calm content and, you know, videos of me reading my Bible and stuff. And no one would say, I don't like that guy. But it's like when there's a McLaren with all the doors up, it's like, I don't know about that guy, right? It'd be easier to be the guy reading my Bible and just calmly talking to you. But it's not who I am, right? And it's like, if I even think about the creator of the universe, I like shiny watches and all that kind of stuff. I look up at the sky at night. I mean, the whole sky's blinging. It's a joke, but it's like, yeah, I don't know. I'm modeling what I see around me, and I see a lot of incredible things all around me. So then why am I supposed to feel weird about an incredible thing? I don't know. It's like, I know it. I know some people are just like, I don't know. They don't like it, but I just like, I think about God, like God owns 1,000 cattle on 1,000 hills. I see a rainbow. That's God showing off. I see a sunset. That's God showing off. I see a sunrise. That's God showing off. I see, the elk coming over a snowy pass in the Rockies. That's God showing off. So it's like, is it God showing off, or is it God just displaying? Is it God showing off, or are you just witnessing abundance? I don't know. Like, I think you're just witnessing abundance. And so it's like, okay. Again, my goal in doing all of that is to inspire.
Yeah.
Like, I want you to see any of those things and go, man, I would like to aspire to have that life too. It's not a brag thing. I don't do it because I want you to think I'm cool. Like, I'll be the first to tell you I'm probably like the seventh biggest dork in Austin, Texas. And I don't know. It's a form of expression. And it's also just a form of gratitude. Like, if I don't display, I don't know. I'd have to think more about that. I mean, I don't know how to explain it to someone that doesn't immediately, it's not their style. Like some people.
But here's I think one of the big morals of the lesson that I think that your life is a teacher. It's like the greatest, the essence of leadership is example. Like, part of what you exemplify is to go for what your dream is. Like, your dream may not be a watch. That's all, or a McLaren, for example. Your dream may be to be able to pay those bills without stressing out at the end of the month. It's just like, that would just fire you up, and you can even go like, be proud of yourself for doing it. Or your dream may be horses. You just love horses, or you love dogs, or you would love to take your kids on that trip, on that, whatever that trip looks like for you. So we have that's what's so cool about humans, and what's so cool about dreams is we all have different dreams and different goals and different things that kind of fire us up. And Tony Robbins says people are not lazy. They simply don't have dreams that inspire them. And so people like you, I think even subconsciously, you're kind of like, yo, guys, you can like have your own dreams and like go for it. Like, I'm going for mine. Like, I'm chasing mine, that kind of thing. And see if you can find dreams that inspire you. You dream something that inspires you. Kind of wakes you up early, kind of keeps you up late, kind of gets you excited, And again, the cool thing is we all have different ones. But again, I think sometimes when you're, let's call it flashy, people are like, oh, I don't know. We have these weird kind of rule sets that you shouldn't wear that because it means, whatever it means. And it's all, people are projecting their kind of stuff, onto that person.
Yeah.
Where that's not even where you're even coming from. You're just living your best life. You just, opened your peacock wings and doing what you do, So
it makes me happy. Like, to put the doors up in the McLaren, I get personal joy from that. To look down and see a nice watch that I worked hard for, I get personal joy from that. I'm not thinking about how do you view it. You know what I mean? And I'll say one more thing on that subject because it could maybe, I don't know, help people long term. But ultimately, if I'm looking at you and going, and kind of maybe judging you a little bit or whatever, I would say maybe to consider this. Okay, so when my life really took off, I was kind of like, with my hardest work ethic and my most energy output, I could only ever make about 80. I mean, my income is like 70, 80, 90,000 a year. And then what happened is, as an adult, I had to get braces. And, there's probably nothing as bad as an adult having to have braces, And it was like so like the last thing on the planet that I wanted to do. I felt so dorky with braces that I just had to finally accept it, of like, I've got braces as an adult. And what was weird is when I just started having fun and not worrying about it, not judging myself so hard, and not, you know, not beating myself up, not just about the braces, but about anything. You know, if I didn't hit a business metric that I was going for, man, I would beat myself up. And when my life really took off is whenever I started, observing or, implementing radical self-love. And so I started to accept everything about myself. So like, before I might have I might have shied away from like, yeah, I like those nice things, but other people might judge me, so I won't buy it. And it's like, that's not radical self-love. Radical self-love is you do it because like you honor the way God made you, And what was interesting about it though was as I accepted myself, all of my little quirks, some of my quirks are I stay up late. Well, then I also usually wake up late, Okay, you know, or my personality types typically, you know, I try to be on time, but my personality type is typically 3 minutes late, even today, right? Like, oh, couldn't find the link. Well, did you look for it? No, you look for it right at the time you were supposed to be joining, right? Do I want to do that? No, but do I do that? Sometimes. It's radical self-love. It's like, I
Every one of our
remember,
leadership meetings, Rick, did someone text Wes? Where's Wes?
no. But I even had this friend that I used to wake up late. I'd stay up till 3 or 4, and I'd wake up at 10, and my friend would call me and be like, dude, did you just wake up? And I'm like, yeah, and so finally my friend was like, you should name your bed prayer. And I'm like, yeah, exactly. So when my friend would call me, be like, dude, did you just wake up? I'm like, no, bro, I've been in prayer. What's up? What do you need?
Yeah, yeah.
Just that radical self-love. But here's what happened to wrap this up is that whenever I fully accepted everything about myself, who I am, my quirks, my positives, my negatives, well, then it's like I also became so much more fun to be around because I didn't judge you. I didn't like the more unique you were, I'm now intrigued. I'm not like, I don't know about that guy, And so I can't ever control how someone views me, but I wish people would give themselves the gift of radical self-love because that even affects even my wife, right? Like I talk to so many, my wife talks to so many women whose husbands, man, I'm like, dude, what's going on with men these days? Like they're mean to their wives. And the stories that she comes back from like lunch dates and stuff, and she's like, this girl's husband said this. And I'm like, what?
Yeah.
Or she made him pay, he made her pay for that. And I'm like, what? And I'm like, this is a person that does not practice radical self-love because it made me better to be around, even my sons, right? Like I'm not wounding my sons because I'm trying to turn them into me because I practice radical self-love. So then I love them for who they are, And so I don't know, the world gets more colorful and interesting whenever I can be completely okay with me.
I love that other part though, where you let down your judgment of them and got more curious, more interested, and more what makes them tick, what makes them special, what makes them unique versus why do they do it that way and why do they do it this way? And man, when we can like lower our judgment and raise our curiosity of people, that is a life-changing experience. To your point, we become much more fun to be around. We become much more enjoyable, to hang out with, and the world just opens up. Your judgment goes down, your curiosity goes up, your love goes up for other people, and your acknowledgement of their unique talents and gifts. I love that idea.
Well, to answer your question or to make your point there, I mean, part of why I think people that I do business with, we all stick together is because since I allow myself to be me, when you're around me, you innately can feel that you can be you. You know what I mean? Whereas if I'm putting on this, then you can sense that and then you kind of keep your guard up. But if I'm fully myself, come as you are, well, then when you're around me, you feel pretty good because you can be yourself, And so I don't know. I
It
wouldn't
reminds me
change,
of
I
that,
wouldn't
that
change it.
Marianne Williamson, let me see if I can look it up, quote. You've heard it 1,000 times, but it's to me, it really is what you're saying. It's that, let me see if I can see how I can open this.
Bro, why are people always judging me on Instagram? What's up with that?
Yeah, no kidding. She says, our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we're powerful beyond measure. It is our light, not our darkness, that most frightens us. We ask ourselves, who am I to be brilliant, gorgeous, talented, fabulous? Actually, who are you not to be? You are a child of God. Your playing small does not serve the world. There's nothing enlightened about shrinking so that other people won't feel insecure around you. We are all meant to shine as children do. We were born to make manifest the glory of God that is within us. It's not just in some of us, it's in everyone. And as we let our own light shine, we unconsciously give other people permission to do the same. As we are liberated from our own fear, our present automatically liberates others. I mean, you're like a living embodiment of that concept of just not holding yourself back, being who you are, and just letting yourself just be it at the highest level, and just have fun with it, and just embrace the quirks and the uniqueness and the funny and the stuff where I don't know, I just is that I'm doing my best over here kind of thing. So, listen, brother, one of my favorite people on the planet.
You as well,
I'm
man.
so fired up to do this. Hopefully, we'll do many, 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 many more. But let's just make sure people can get connected with you. I would encourage you, by the way, I want to encourage you guys to make sure you connect with Wes on social. And the reason why is he's one of the best marketers I've ever seen. If you have any sort of business, any sort of like career you're looking to take to the next level, you're going to want to like learn from and study Wes. Those plaques on the wall for, 10 million plus in sales online, that stuff doesn't just happen. He's a great marketer. He's a really, strategic marketer. And so when you're watching him, a lot of this stuff is he knows what he's doing and how to build your audience and move products. So how can we connect with you online? And I'd love for people to reach out to you.
Yeah, the best way is just Wes Bewley, Instagram, and I'm got that little blue check. So that, there's obviously some pretenders, but just Wes Bewley on Instagram is the best way. And I definitely, you never know what you're going to see on Instagram, because I have this, some of my mentors taught me, like, if you're boring, you're broke. You know what I mean? Like, so I try to have fun. I try to like keep you guessing on social media, but then I also try to deliver, like, every now and then try to deliver some stuff that's actually valuable, So be entertained when you go to Instagram. Don't go there expecting like, that's not my, don't go there expecting like a Harvard professor, because that's not what you're going to.
No, but guys, this is the point. This is the example we're talking about. This is the essence of leadership as example is you will be entertained, which is, it's like, instead of him going there saying, you should entertain people, and here's a video of 3 steps to entertain people, it's like, you just go there and you're like, this is entertaining to watch. This is crazy. Like, what's going on in here? That's the point. Like, that's the magic,
Yeah. No, I
So
appreciate
Wes,
that.
Man, I love you, bro. Appreciate you
too,
doing
man.
this.
Thanks so much for having
look
me
forward
on.
to many more, and I'm excited for people to, get a little bit more Wes Bewley in their life,
I sure appreciate that, Justin. Thanks so much, man.